Hi guys, Andy N, spoken label, back in the house on a Tuesday evening. I've got a busy week this week, and it is a busy week because I'm out podcasting tomorrow night as well. And on Thursday night is my night I co-run in Chorlton, Speak Easy. So, and I've got a podcast tonight with a wonderful lady currently living in York. So this is a busy week, but it's a great to be busy. Now, I've got a wonderful lady with me today called Kathryn Lund. Now, she is the author, and it may not come up very well, so it has done there, of this wonderful book, The Things We Left Sleeping, which I actually reviewed with Amanda, my wife, on Reading in Bed a couple of months ago. And at the time, I forget which way around this is going to be. I can't remember if I agreed with Kathryn I'd review the book and then bring on spoken label, or I just told her I'd bring you on both. So anyway, I forgot myself. Anyway, Kathryn, we'll forget about that bit. Obviously, tell us a bit about yourself, first of all. So obviously, I said, I know you currently live in York, but you weren't originally from York, were you?
I wasn't, no. So thank you so much for having me. And you did, in fact, agree to have me on both. You were that excited about meeting me and reading. So I do live in York, but I'm originally from Lancashire. I was born in Burnley, of all places, and then went to university in the south for quite a while, which is where, according to all my friends, I lost my accent. So I think I still sound reasonably northern, reasonably Lancastrian. And then after completing my MA in creative writing, I wanted to move back up to the north. And York is just such a beautiful, diverse, fun city, but a small city. You can get around it in an hour or so I can't get too lost. That was very important in considering where I was going to live. Because I do have a neurofunctional disorder, so I quite often get lost, I quite often get disorientated. So I find York a nice size, friendly city, and love being back in the north. Feel very happy to be back up in this part of the country.
Brilliant. So I apologise to anybody there what's going on the colouring. The colouring's going a bit mad on the computer, so I was trying to rearrange it all as we go along. It's not like I was trying to do Kathryn's head enough. I want to say that straight away. So now, which is not. So anyway, Kathryn, obviously, where did all your writing come from originally then?
I've always loved writing. I come from a house that had lots of books in it growing up. So we read a lot, we read aloud a lot. My granddad would read aloud to us on Sundays. My mum used to read aloud to us, and any book really. She read us a lot of murder mysteries when we were young. I found them terrifying and exciting, a lot of Alan Gardner. So a very literate household, a very scientific based household. My mum was a teacher, my dad was a design engineer. So there was always lots of writing, lots of creativity, lots of music. And my mum was a brilliant artist. My dad's a brilliant drawer. I can't draw. The creativity I got seems to be that I can write. But it's not something that I really pursued after college. When I went away to university, I did archaeology. I just took a completely different path. I did something that was, fun and outdoors and practical and different. And I got back into writing probably round about the same time I got ill, when I started developing my neurofunctional disorder, because I found it was something that even when I lost everything else, even when I got very ill, even when I was really struggling, I could still write fiction. It was a really positive outlet for me. So people talk about the power of notebooking, they talk about the power of writing and of art and of creativity, with helping with illness, with helping with neurological disorders, and that was an absolute truth for me. So my writing, it sort of always been there, but I sort of re-embraced it when I became ill, because I found it to be such a true and vital part of me, and I've kept it in my life ever since.
Brilliant. Now, also, people will review your website. Obviously, you'll spot there is 2 books there actually at the moment. Now, I've not read your short story collection, The Things We Keep in the Cupboard. So tell us about that one, first of all, obviously, because as I said, I can't ask you a lot about that because I've not read it. But I do get the feeling, obviously, it does touch on a lot of the same, in a different way, the themes that obviously come in your novel, I presume.
It absolutely does, because I find that when I write, I want to write about the world as I'm experiencing it, and I want to almost purge experiences from myself. Writing for me is very much an act of taking what's inside the head and recreating it outside so that other people can actually access it. because I don't know if any, your listeners out there are listening and they have mental illness, they have anxiety and depression like I've had, but it can be very difficult to translate what's in your head to outside of the head. So that's what that collection of short stories is all about. So I think there's either 4 or 5 different stories in there, and they all explore different things that I've gone through and experienced. So the things we keep in the cupboard, for example, is all about somebody who's writing basically what seems like a sorry, I get mind absences and I'm trying to think. A Woolen Testament, there we are. So they've written a Woolen Testament, which is a list of things like a red sweater and 3:22 in the afternoon on Tuesday. It's these list of things that they've left behind and they're waiting for them to be collected. And what it is, that comes from my experience of when I attempted an overdose. It's somebody writing a note of all the very, very important things, that sort of pin memories in their life that come back to them in these moments of very deep distress and very deep anxiety. So it's my way of exploring some of the really quite serious mental health problems that I've had without writing a straight story where it's just somebody, doing something dangerous to themselves. So I never want to write, a straight and linear narrative. I want to find that way that makes the experience of what it's like come onto the paper. So that's what I try and do with those short stories. So I have lots of problems with identity. When you get a neurological disorder, you really feel like you lose yourself. So in one of those, somebody's mind and somebody's soul has been transplanted into another body, and they meet that previous body's lover, and the lover can't tell the difference between the old body and the new body. It's they sound quite strange, but mental illness is strange, and the feeling of mental illness can be strange. And for me, that was my way of manifesting those experiences.
Yeah, no, sure, I can see that with it, from what you're saying there. Like, it was, you made me smile then, you're going on about you like writing stories that are non-linear. Now, if people read a novel, which I'll come on to in a minute, it's most definitely not a non-linear novel. Now, but I'm just curious, Hannah, one thing I found interesting was, why did you call both your 2 books to date then? By starting off with The Things We Keep in the Cupboard and Things We Left Sleeping. Was that a conscious decision?
It wasn't. Well, I have OCD, so I like rhythmic sounding things. So like the things we keep in the cupboard, the things we left sleeping. It's a sentence that I like the feel of, and when I'm writing, the rhythmic feel of the sentence is hugely important to me. Just as important, as if you were writing poetry. It has to feel right, and I spend a lot of time struggling with my OCD because it won't let me move on until a sentence is just rhythmically perfect. I like the feeling of that sentence. But the things we left sleeping and the things we keep in the cupboard, it is referencing the same things. So when we are ill and when we suffer, a deep life-changing illness or a grief, we do leave parts of ourselves somewhere safe in the hope that we can come back to them. We leave relationships, we leave our ambitions, we leave huge parts of our personalities behind because we don't have the strength and we don't have the energy to focus on that. And some of those things we can never pick up again. We lose them. The person that we become can't carry those things anymore. They can't be that person. And I spent a lot of time learning to be okay with that. And some of those things we absolutely refuse to leave behind, and we have to take them with us, else we're not ourselves. So the things we keep in the cupboard, as I say in the short story, it's this list of hugely important things that this person wants to leave for the person that she thinks she's going to become. Actually, she almost sees suicide as an act of transformation. And these 5 or 6 hugely important things in her life are going to be there for her, she thinks, because those are the fundamental things of herself. And my novel, The Things We Left Sleeping, is very much in the same vein. That this character, my main character Evie, she's experiencing mental ill health, she's experiencing seizures, and she has just lost everything about herself. But it is just sleeping, and she can wake it up if she tries, and she can wake it up if she journeys, but she has to decide what things are important to her and what is she going to let go of and what is she going to leave behind and still be herself. So I think it is interesting that they have the same title, but I think it's more than just a subconscious accident. It's because that is what I'm trying to write about, and that's what I struggle with in my life as well, and that I've hugely struggled with over the last 10-12 years since becoming ill.
Yeah, I got the feeling that I saw that. I was wondering about reading up you as a person. Like, I knew there had to be some sort of links between the two books straight away. So, right, I think we'd better get onto the novel now anyway. So now, I said 40. I have reviewed this months ago on reading it better. And I found this a fascinating novel. It really was one of the most surprising novels I've read in ages, and I loved it.
Thank you.
Because now what you've done is, and obviously people will read the book. Obviously, I'm not going to read the blurb because it's not my blurb to read. But obviously, the book is about two main characters, Evie and Stevie. Now, that's basically share everything, and you read that and you read the book. Now, but what's interesting on it is there's two narrations going on in this book, and people will notice on the left-hand side of the book page, it's Evie's story. And then on the right-hand side, it's Stevie's story. I hope I've got that right.
Got that absolutely correct.
Because I know what I'm like. I'm dyspraxic, so I get things mixed up. So when I'm a bugger. Now, but I want to know, obviously, first of all, then, obviously, Kathryn, what made you want to do the book in this way? Because I've known a lot of writers that do two narratives, and they would do one chapter, then a second chapter, changing the pace all along. But you've made it like, even if the paragraph doesn't finish on one page, by obviously that person, you're basically wait till you get to the next left page or the right page.
Yes, and it was a deliberate choice. And I know on your review that like there was some comments about this can be quite disjointing, it can be quite disorientating. But when I approached this book, what I wanted to bring was the experience of what my illness is actually like, but also what our heads are like. So we don't do things in a linear way. We're experiencing our lives one way, and there's things that are happening outside of ourselves, and life isn't chaptered. So, whilst I'm talking to you here, my family's elsewhere doing something else, and it's all happening at the same time. And one of the things that's very, very difficult when you're ill is relating the world to yourself and understanding time. And even if you've gone through a period of really deep grief, you can get this feeling that you're happening at one pace and the world outside is happening at another pace. So one of the things that I wanted the book to reflect was that Evie, who's ill, she isn't being ill somewhere separate, and then we got to the other narrative, and that's happening somewhere separate. These things are happening simultaneously. We've got Evie, who's in a world inside her head where it's snowing, where it's struggling, where she's battling in the strange world called the farm. And then outside of this, in the real world, Stevie and Evie's dad, they're trying to fix her. They're at the hospital. They're dealing with all the paperwork. All this is going on, and it's going on at the same time. So we've got two sets of people battling the same problem, but they absolutely can't connect because illness isolates us. It causes division, it causes problems. So we've got a left-hand side narrative and a right-hand side narrative, which quite often the people in them are dealing with the same problems, but they're unable to deal with them together. And it was a deliberate choice, but it took me a while to realise that that's how I wanted the book to be laid out, because originally I had just written most of Evie's narrative, and then my lecturer said to me, well, what's happening in the world outside of her head? And I started thinking, well, what was happening? There would be her family, there would be Stevie, all these things would be happening, which is the other side of illness, which is sort of the outside world part of illness, which is other people having to deal with everything, and it was happening at the same time. So I wanted to show it happening at the same time.
Yeah, works really well as well.
Unable to connect.
Works really well, because I think that's the strength of the book, really. You took us on that journey through two different worlds at the same time, and I got that straight away with the book.
Thank you.
And I particularly like the references to the farm in the book, obviously from Evie's side, which obviously was used several times in the book, and I got reason why each time. But tell us about then how the idea of the farm came into the book for you then, on Evie's side.
Yeah, so the farm is a really interesting concept, and I wanted to give the idea that from my experience of having seizures, from my experience of what I've struggled with, I felt like I was in a very different place to everybody else, almost physically. So like I could be with people and just feel like I was in a different room and in a different place, and I wanted to exaggerate that. Obviously, when I was writing the novel, I wanted to actually create a place where Evie was and a place where Evie was stuck. And I wanted to put her into a place that she could explore, that she could move around, that she could inhabit, that she'd almost manifested, you know, from her own memories and from her own thoughts. So as we enter and journey through the book, we come to realise that this farm, you know, it is a physical place. As part of her recovery, she starts walking around it, she starts rooting it. And again, that comes from my experience of having to rebuild my spatial understanding and having to, you know, reteach myself how to get from my dad's house to the shops and back, how to retake buses. So I wanted us to have this physical place that she's inhabiting, even though she's only inhabiting it in her mind. And I've put it on the farm because I wanted it to be a place that I knew well. So it's actually my best friend Hannah's parents' farm that they were tenants of when I was at university. And it's a place, a beautiful place just outside of Milton Keynes, with a moat and this beautiful ancient farmhouse and a cherry tree in the garden that we used to sit and eat under. And from the first time I went there, her parents were just loving and welcoming and made me feel like part of their home. And, you know, it was inhabited by dogs and cats and animals. And to me, it was just a wonderful, warm and happy and deeply, deeply safe place. And one of the last really happy memories that I have before I got ill and before my mum died was my friend Hannah's wedding there in a big marquee with all my university friends, and we were dancing. So it's my way of putting, you know, a safe and secure place of mine and putting it into the book and just letting my character have it. So I basically gave Evie my safe place and a happy place.
Yeah,
and that's part of what I want to do in the book a lot. So like we explore Evie's mum is dead, and you know, we explore memories of her mum, and some of those are my memories because I wanted a place to put some things that I can't hold on to, some things that I've left sleeping, and they are literally in the book, and that's what the farm is.
Yeah, I got that because I think that's what I thought was really strong about this book. I felt, as much as been a book of fiction, I felt there was elements of fact in it that you placed into the book and made them fiction, if that makes sense. And I think it give it the depth, give it a really good human touch in the book, and that's why I think it worked really well for me.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely wanted, because I said to me, this almost an act of taking these things that I've so struggled to describe, to, you know, to tell my neurologist what it is that's wrong, to tell them what it feels like, and this has been the best way that I can to express it and to bring it out. But you know, I wanted to, I mean, my mum, she died within 6 weeks of a cancer diagnosis. It was hugely traumatic. It was absolutely awful to live through. But she was this, you know, this huge part of my life, and I wanted to put her somewhere in the book, and I wanted to put, you know, the importance of the parent relationship into the book, and almost the safeness of my childhood. So there's a scene in the book where Stevie comes to visit Evie, and she's having this memory of, you know, Evie and her family all stood around the piano and playing, and the importance of music. And you know, that comes directly from my memories of me falling asleep as a child, and my mum would be playing music downstairs and the lamps would be on, and I would just feel really safe going to sleep. So I wanted to put these somewhere safe, because I do have such problems with my memory that, you know, I don't always remember things, I don't always recall. So these ones that I've kept with me, they're extremely precious, and I've almost put them in the book as a safe depository. It's a depository of my sleeping things.
Right, yeah, I got that. Now, that been the case, obviously, then the character in it, obviously, when we're talking about Evie and again with it. Now, I have to ask you this, and it obviously, like with Evie itself, and obviously we talk about Evie's dad who comes into the book, mostly on Stevie's side. It felt like to me, and this before you mentioned this, I felt this in places your own dad. It was. It felt like him in places, even though the memories are made fiction, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, I think my dad has been such a steadfast part of my life. Like, he's always been a steadfast part of my life. I've been very, very fortunate in the parents that I've had, hugely supportive. And him and my mum had this absolutely amazing. So there's a scene in the book that describes how Evie's parents meet, and it's actually based on how my parents meet. They have this absolutely wonderful sort of romantic past, and they did everything together. They lived in each other's lives, and then within 6 weeks she was gone, and my dad just shouldered it absolutely, and he kept going and kept going. And then I was ill, and he shouldered that, and he kept going and he kept going and he kept going, and he still keeps going. He's had his own cancer scare. he's lived through that, and he still keeps going. And I think it is absolutely phenomenal. And I wanted to put something of his strength in there. So even though in the book we see Evie's dad struggling, and my dad doesn't necessarily show me struggling side, I wanted to show the hugeness of what people do shoulder when they shoulder grief, and they shoulder their family, and they keep going. So in the book, Davey's struggling, and the struggle sort of more played out. And with my dad, I know that he struggled and he's kept it more to himself. But I remember when I was at my mum's funeral and we were walking out the door, and my dad just sort of collapsed his weight onto me, and I had to keep on walking and hold him up. And it was the first time in my life I've ever had to hold my dad up for anything. That was the first time I really had to hold him up. So I wanted to show the strength of people that keep going. So to me, Dave, Evie's father in the book, is someone that is struggling, and we see a sort of drawn out version of that struggle through the book, but he does keep going. So just like Evie's journeying towards where she can be safe, and Stevie's journeying back and forwards and onwards to a place where she can be with Stevie, and where she faces her own family past, Davey's going forward to a place where he can sort of stand strong again. So Dave is very unlike my dad in many ways, but it definitely comes from the love and respect that I have for my dad, and everything that he has gone through in these last 10 years.
No, I get it completely. You can see it straight away. Like, brilliant. It was very, very well told about that. It was definitely with Evie's dad in the book, and I really understood the character. It made me think of my own dad, that, because like my dad, we'd lost my dad a couple of years ago for a stroke, and basically at the time he went downhill. He took my mum out in the process as well, because my mum fractured a hip running around after him. Yeah. So, and then we had problems with my brother-in-law. That I remember those couple of months. It was a difficult couple of months. But yeah, I can see what you were getting at with that book, and it really hit me quite hard.
Thank you.
Now, I've got to ask you as well, because you made some interesting textual choices in this book. I think that's a good way, probably the best way of putting it. For example, now, I did like the fact where you didn't put in numbers on the book, whether that was an accident on the page, whether that was an accident or not. But
no, that was deliberate. That was deliberate. And I think it's because, I want you to be able to, I don't want to dictate how you go through this book, because it is, as I said, we've got this left-hand side narrative of Evie's, we've got the right-hand side narrative of Stevie and Dave as they, just try and sort the impact of this illness and this death on their life. We've got the medical notes that intersect them. We've got Evie's mental health notes. And really, it's a book where you explore it yourself and you make sense of it yourself, because that's what Evie is having to do, and it's what Stevie and Dave are having to do. So they're having to make sense of Evie's finances, they're having to make sense of all of these random notes that she leaves to herself, they're having to make sense of her illness and their relationships. And I thought page numbers would be too distracting, because you'd feel like you'd have to go page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, and you absolutely don't. So I've had people who've read this by reading all the left-hand side first, then reading all the right-hand side first, then reading all the medical notes. I've had people who've told me that, they read a bit of Evie's side and they go back and see what Stevie's doing, and they sort of pick and choose their own way through. So it's very deliberate. This book is meant to be an experience. It's meant to be a way of you navigating your way through and finding your way through, just like the characters have had to, and just like me and my family have had to, as we deal with the things that have happened to us.
Right, yeah.
Now, I know it's annoying, and you do need a bookmark, obviously, if you're not going to read it all in one go. So
I did.
Bookmark.
I did straight away with that one. I had to have a bookmark with that straight away. Now, I did actually raise a point with this one, and I think in some ways I like the fact the experience of having it as a paperback, but it was one where, when you put the book together, did you envisage if people are reading it on the Kindle, say for example, or a PDF? It'd be a completely different experience, wouldn't it? Really?
It would, so. And it isn't available in PDF and Kindle form. Right. Apologies to people that use that format, and that is basically because of my neurological condition. I can't read on screen. I can't screen read. I really struggle. I really struggle with typing. So I only read in physical form, and this is a book of, the experience of my type of illness, of my type of neurofunctional disorder. So the book that I wrote to explain that is a book that can only be read in physical form. And I think I would have found it difficult to express it in a format that's Kindle friendly, in a format that's ebook friendly, because I struggle with Kindles and I struggle with ebooks. So when I was making this book, quite often I was, physically putting pages together, physically arranging it, physically writing it, physically, hand drawing the pictures, and then having them sent in. So to me, creating this book was a very physical thing. And I think, although it is a shame for people that struggle with physical text, it's my book and I'm the writer, and I struggle with screens. So it is the format that it's in, and it reflects the illness that I have. And I think it would also be hugely confusing on Kindle and very difficult on Kindle. But I'm open to suggestions as to how it might work. If anyone who can spend time moving around screens has any suggestions, I'm wildly open to them.
Yeah, I couldn't work it. I think I'd probably struggle with it that way, but I get you completely with it. I think it definitely is a book that has to be read on paperback, or this is probably a trade paperback actually, but no, it's excellent anyway. Now, the question I want to get onto is obviously your use of multimedia in this book, because there is sections, for example, where like you've got bits and pieces like use of the notebook, where most of these are like on Evie's side, where you've got like, and I don't want to give too much away, obviously, like you wrote like task 1, then there's a lot of scribbles underneath the bottom of it. I thought this is hugely resent. And also there's sections in the book when she does it again, and other bits and pieces come up in it. And it reflects, because it's using both sides, both narrative, it adds a lot to the actual mental state they're both going in. Now, was that, tell us about that. What made you want to do with this sort of multimedia textual approach in the book as well?
Yeah, the multimedia aspect of the book is hugely important, and it comes from that struggle that I've had to actually express what's going on in my own mind, especially when I have been deeply ill and just not able to really tell people what it is that it feels like. And as part of my creative writing course, we play around with different forms and different mediums and talk about different voices. And I was really struggling to start this. I wanted to, write about these experiences that I was struggling to start. So on a piece of paper, I wrote the word face, and then I used the word face to draw a face. And I was doing that because, after a seizure, you really, and I've spoken to other people who have had seizures and have had bouts of unconsciousness, you almost struggle to reconnect your language. So I would be able to look at my face and know that it's a face and that there's a word which is spelt face, but the connection between those two things are lost. And an example I use a lot is that I saw my sister and I knew she was my sister and I knew the word sister, but the connection between the two just wouldn't fire up that was my sister. And then, the emotional connections that come with that being my sister. And I looked at that face, and one of my writing colleagues at the time said, "Oh, that's a really strange image." And I drew another one just after that, which was a face which had other things that were building up the hair, like different words that building up the hair. And what I realized was that you don't have to write a sentence to express what you're feeling. So when Evie starts notebooking, she's starting off with a blank page. Her mind is utterly blank. She's utterly scrambled. She has no idea where she is. She has no control over her language. She has no advocacy at all, until it's revealed that she has this notebook, and the narrator on the form is telling it, use the notebook, and he's setting these tasks, and as she says, she starts scribbling on and she doesn't want to do it. But then she finally does start, and we can see her filling those blank pages by starting off with these faces that are just made up of words and are made up of starting to reconstruct the language. It turns into a sentence turns into a paragraph turns into a memory, and through that she's able to start taking over. And you notice that the notebook entries, that started off as this blank page and then these word pictures and these sentences, they start to actually become the more dominant narrative until as she goes toward the end, she's becoming the more dominant writer. And to me, that was my way of saying that this is what it's like. You start off feeling like you have absolutely no control over your language, over your linguistic connections, through the different bits of your mind, like from your memory to the emotive memory that goes with it. But it does rebuild and it does come back. And for some people, it comes back through notebooking. It's why they suggest it. For me, it came back through writing, writing fiction, writing novels, writing poetry. So again, it was my way of expressing the reality of mental illness and of mental difference, and of the struggle with language and with awareness and with self-advocacy that can give. Because at the beginning, it is like being with Evie in that blank place, which is just, it has no direction, it has no language in it, it has nothing in it, it's just an empty page. And that's where it started. It started from that picture.
Brilliant. Yeah, you can see that. If people read the book, I love the fact that you just answered the next question, actually, so I can do it as a comment. I can do it as a comment rather than a question. No, you got the feeling as the book went along, there was a dominant narrative starting to come into the book. And it was really interesting, the bit where some of these, there was a bits in where the multimedia aspects went onto both pages. And tell me if I got this right very briefly, obviously. Was that where you felt like the two people were starting to reconnect them? Was that the point behind
it? Absolutely. So when you actually look at the layout of the book, you'll see there's, in between the left-hand side and the right-hand pages, there's a really strong, definite, bold line at the beginning, a sort of black line going right down the page, and then medical note. And the two narratives are sort of right up against the left and right-hand margins of the page. They're hugely distant from each other. They're physically distant. They're mentally distant. And then the characters start journeying. And the moments where they start coming together or start being in places where they're reaching out, the narratives do come closer together. So as you say, in some places, like when Evie's trying to get out of the gate of the farm, and the gate of the farm, the text of it moves right up against that line, and it's almost pushing it, because she's really trying to push her way out and past. And there's other times, such as like when Stevie goes into Evie's flat and she starts looking through her things, and she's sleeping in her bed, and just really sort of feeling Evie there as a presence. And again, she's starting to get physically closer on the page. So it is a very physical book, and the layout itself is part of the story. So you can look at it, and as you flick through it, even without reading it, you can see not only Evie's voice becoming stronger as it actually becomes a narrative and stops being pictures. You can see these two people, or three people if you include Dave, starting off as two very disjointed, separate people, and you can actually trace their journey through the layout of the book.
Yeah, you can see it straight away, and that's what I think the journey is. It's a book. They always say with the narrative, and this is the last bit I want to ask you about the book here for the opinion of this. They always say with a book, it's usually meant to be like A to B to C. Your case is where it's A, then like they finally they come together like a triangle to the top point. Really, it's really, really different. And respect to you, Kathryn, for trying out a book that's really interesting and quite difficult in places, which is good in my mind. I like difficult, right? A book to do.
I wanted it to be difficult because the subject's difficult. I don't think you can write an easy book on mental health, and I don't think you can write an easy book on completely losing your mind to illness. And I don't think you can write an easy book on grief. Grief is a huge thing. It's a life-changing thing, and it utterly floors you. And even though everyone grieves, everyone's grief is difficult. And I wanted a book that reflected the difficulty of the situation of the characters.
Yeah, you can see it straight away. Good luck with it, definitely. So it's been tremendous. I've really enjoyed reading it. Now, what do you have planned next for your creativity then? Do you have any others? Obviously, I'm guessing if you're going to write another book, it's going to be nothing like the two you've done so far.
It is. So I've got a young adult book for sort of 10 to 12-year-olds. It's of a similar theme. It's about grief. It's about the loss of a parent. It's set in Oxford, which is where I spent a lot of my life. And it's about a young girl called Alice Ireland, whose father works at the Natural History Museum. Her mum's still in hospital, and she's utterly obsessed with natural history, obviously with the sort of background that she comes from. She's obsessed with sort of extinct and endangered animals that she has in this book of hers. And one of those animals is the dodo. And of course, the Natural History Museum in Oxford has a stuffed dodo in it. It's not a real one, but it is there. But the story starts off with a strange box being delivered at the Natural History Museum, and in it is actually the stuffed remains of the last real dodo on Earth. And she sees her dad stuffs animals. That's his job as a taxidermist. And she sees him stuff it, and she sees it there, and it's empty and it's not real. And she puts a paper heart inside it, and it comes alive. And basically, it starts bringing back all the extinct animals of the world, and she wants to use it obviously to save her mum. So it's all about her journey of her trying to get this dodo from the museum to the hospital and all the carnage that creates as all these animals wake up and start stampeding around. And it's pretty much finished. I'm just trying to find a home for it. So hopefully
fingers crossed,
I'll find that soon.
Let me know when you do, because I would love to have you on again here. Because I want to ask you lots of probing questions about that then, in comparison to what's been done here. So now, obviously, Kathryn, to wrap up part one, obviously, I want to give you a chance to do a bit of reading for us in the second half. Where can people get hold of the book first?
So the book is available from online retailers. So you can try Amazon, Waterstones, Barnes and Noble. It's Kathryn spelled in a highly obscure way. So I'm Kathryn K. I know, why did my parents do this? But Kathryn, and it's Lund like the city, Lund. So Kathryn Lund. If you type that and Things We Left Sleeping into Amazon, into Waterstones, into Barnes and Noble, it will come up for you. You can get it through my publishers, which is atmospherepress.com. They're based in Texas, or request it at your local bookstore. And if they use the same distributors as those, you'll absolutely be able to get it. And I have a website, which is www.kathrynlundtheauthor.co.uk. And that has all the links and directions for you as well.
Brilliant. That's answered my last question. So, right, well, let you take a pause breath now, Kathryn. So we've been chatting for a bit here as well. So I want to give you a chance to do a bit of readings in the second half. So hang around, everybody, because I'm looking forward to seeing how Kathryn approaches this, definitely. So
I'm looking forward to see how I approach it as well.
Tremendous. Okay, we will see you all in a few minutes, guys. Okay. Thank you again, Kathryn.